I always said actually growing up, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think for myself, I have to tell myself that a lot. It's just a marathon. Take your time. It's the industry you've always wanted to be in. It's the work you've always wanted to do.
Meghann Scully, presenter, broadcaster, journalist, author, blogger. It was really within a short space of time that you lost your brother Marcus and then your father.
I went in and my mother was completely flustered. She's like, something's wrong. And I was like, what are you on about? And she's like, Marcus isn't home. She rang our neighbour whose son was driving and they said there's been an accident. And then like the doctor and surgeon came out and they eventually were like, and he didn't survive. And I remember thinking, sorry, what?
But when do you think it really hit you that you'd lost your brother?
Like I went through a very dark period where I used to pray that God or whoever was there listening to me would switch my place with Marcus.
This is a GK Media podcast.
Meghann Scully, presenter, broadcaster, journalist, author, blogger. Welcome to Garry Talks.
Thank you so much. I'm always laughing because there's literally, when people ask me what is your title, I'm like, which one do we go for today? It's like, I don't know. There's a lot of them, but yeah, I'll take all of them.
Great. I have to say, I was saying to myself when I was coming up to the interview this morning, am I envious of Meghann? I said, no, because that sounds negative. I admire you.
Yeah.
I admire you. I think you've achieved so much. I think you're a great driver. Internally, how you motivate yourself and your resilience. I think you've gone through so much hardship, but it doesn't show externally. And I just champion what you do because I just think you're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's funny because I think over the years, I've spoken about this actually before on my Instagram. I think I've had this like lack of inner confidence. As you mentioned, like the outer confidence is there, but I've always had this lack of inner confidence. And when people say to me, oh, you've been doing so much, you seem to be doing so well. For years, I was like, I've always felt like I was behind, that I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I was always kind of going, how have I not gotten there yet? Why haven't I gotten there yet? And I think as you mentioned there, with all the hardship I went through when I was younger, I think I had to give myself a bit of a break and say, you're still dealing with a lot of trauma from your childhood that you're still trying to navigate through. So you're not, you're in your own lane, stay in your own lane, because again, we always know that when you compare yourself to other people, it's negative for you. And like that's for me, I was kind of looking at maybe people that were in the same industry and kind of going, oh, how are they getting, they seem to do a lot better than me. And what am I doing wrong? And am I not good enough? And I went through that for an awful long time. And I think it's only probably since I hit my 30s and kind of got a bit older and got a bit more life experience that I realised that, you know what, it's okay. I always said actually growing up, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think for myself, I have to tell myself that a lot. It's just a marathon. Take your time. It's the industry you've always wanted to be in. It's the work you've always wanted to do. And it's something that I definitely want to continue with. So I just have had to learn to kind of build the inner confidence now and kind of, accept the path I'm on and also enjoy it. And as you can probably tell, like I'm really enjoying it right now and I'm having a great time.
Brilliant. Also, I'm jealous though that you're so articulate. I can never string a sentence together properly. It flows out of you when you talk. It's amazing. Like, it's great.
I always put this down to reading at Mass. And we had a lovely priest, Father Keogh, in our Drahan parish years ago. And he used to visit our school because our school was right beside the church. And sometimes he'd come in and he just, I don't know how it started, but he was like, oh, he always got someone in the class to read when he'd come in to visit us. And I think one day he just asked me to read. And from that day on, he was like, okay. And then he was like, yeah, Meghann, just come up here and read. And then I just kind of became the reader in the class. And then because we were right beside the church, Mass is obviously every morning. So those of us that were Mass servers would...
Every morning?
Yeah, would have a rotation. So I might go up from this week and then maybe next week you might go up and then Amy might go up the other week. So we'd be on rotation the whole time. And at the morning Mass, which they'd be kind of the 15-20 minutes, the quick sermon, one morning I was only about 11 or 12 and Father Keogh was like, actually, Meghann, do you know what? I'll get you to do the reading today instead of me doing the whole thing. So I was like, okay. And I remember stepping out on the altar, like, because Mass crowd are a tough crowd. Yeah. And I was a child. And from that day on, he was like, yeah, he goes, any morning I was or any week I was serving, I just read as well. And then after that, he put me on the Saturday, Sunday list, which was the big one. And I think from then on, I knew I had the pressure on me to deliver the first reading, the second reading, the responsorial psalm, the whole lot of it. And I used to go into my granny the morning of or the night before to kind of go through my reading to make sure I got the words right, because I was like, there'd be nothing worse now than saying some word wrong. And I think from there, that probably honed the craft of public speaking, because as I said, I knew how to deliver a message. I had a crowd to kind of almost control and to keep with me, because I always found at Mass, you know, when sometimes you might kind of drift off, and I was like, no, I need to keep everyone like focused. And then after Mass, I'd be getting, you know, people come up and the parents and grandparents like, great reading. From then on, I kind of think maybe I put the pressure myself to always deliver a good reading. And then from then on, I ended up getting involved in public speaking competitions and debating in secondary school. And so I think, yeah, I always people laugh, but I was like, I have to put it down to reading at Mass.
Yeah, it's amazing if the right encouragement is given at a young age, how it can really help us later in life.
Absolutely. And I have to, as I said, they were the tough crowd, and I really enjoyed it. And I did it for years. And as I said, it just really stood to me. And I think I always knew then, I know it's not performing when you're at Mass, but I always knew that I enjoyed that kind of, I guess, presenting of some like stage and case. And then I knew pretty quickly I couldn't sing, and then found out I couldn't really dance. And then I was like, right, I'm not going to be a singer, I'm not going to be a dancer. But then I always got involved in school plays, and I always ended up maybe getting if not the lead, once there was no singing. Or one time I actually got to MC an entire play, and I'd stay on the stage for the whole lot of it. And I really enjoyed that as well. So then I think that's when I realised there's something in this that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I did ask my mother one day, actually, it was when I first went into Galway Bay FM. I had to go into, there was a charity race on in memory of my brother. So I had to go in and talk about it. And I think I must have just been 15 at the time. And I came out and I said to my mother, I really liked that. What would that be? If I wanted to go to college and study that, what would it be? And she was like, media. And I was like, right, I want to do media.
Because that's where we first met.
Yeah.
In Galway Bay FM. You were probably in your early 20s then, is that?
Yeah, I was working in the current affairs program, and I remember, because you know nowadays we don't really we're not really phone callers, we're more texters, but that day you'd call people all the time and get guests on, and then someone might lose a line, then you'd ring in, and it was just this like intensity, and I was like, oh, this is great crack. But yeah, I was in there, I think and I loved being in there. It was always so much fun, and sure, I think I was in there probably distracting you all, talking to you when you're probably trying to do your work.
But did you work in the news there as well?
I think I did 1 week in news.
Okay, yeah.
But it was mainly current affairs program.
Because I remember talking about reading, there was a job coming up in the news department. So they were doing auditions and interviews upstairs in the boardroom. And I was already working in current affairs and stuff. And I said, oh, sure, I'll go upstairs and I'll do this. So I had to read a news article and then read out some made up death notices. And I read out like 3 death notices. And then I sat back in the chair, really proud of myself, big smile on my face, chuffed. Thinking, yeah, I nailed it. And they said, Garry, do you realise you got every single death notice wrong? The wrong name, the wrong location. And I didn't notice whatsoever. So I said, yeah, maybe reading out death notices is not for me.
Do you know what? I think that is the hardest part of media. Reading news and reading the death notices. Because I remember going to school and being on the school bus, and actually on Galway Bay FM, every time the death notices come on, the radio went straight up, and the bus driver would be like, everyone quiet. And we'd all just be sitting there really quiet listening. And like they're still played in my granny's house every day. It's like to hear who's passed away and what the details are. But I used to always think that when I'd listen to them, I'm like, if you slip up once, they'll know and they'll tell you. So I just think that's the hardest part, I think, of radio. Yeah,
it's the one thing I never wanted to do, especially around Christmas time. There'd be, skeleton staff on, and they'd ask to read the death notices, and I'd just go hiding. Can we talk about growing up in Ardrahan? What was life like? So obviously the Catholic Church, I presume, played a big role in your life.
Yeah, so I only moved to Ardrahan when I was 10. So my mother's originally from there, but we were actually born in Dublin. Dad was from Gort and Mum was Ardrahan, and they married and moved to Dublin, which in the 80s was like the big thing. Like, it's funny, like when we lived up there, all our neighbours were from the west of Ireland, or everyone was like, every house in the estate was like walking into a country house. And it was all like Mayo, Roscommon, Leitrim. Everyone was from the countryside, and it had that kind of country feel up there. Like, it was very much so open door policy, and you're always, if you weren't at home, you're in someone else's house, and we're kind of like looking around going, where's the kids, or look out for the bikes. So we were there till we were about, I was 5, I think. And I had started national school we were in Dundrum, which obviously everyone knows now for the town centre, but back in the day it was a small, lovely suburban village.
Okay.
Like, I think we had crazy prices was about as big as it got for shops. And then Nutgrove was down the road. But I started in St. Tracta's school, and it was a huge school. It was like massive, because obviously it was suburban Dublin and massive surrounding areas. So I think in baby infants alone, we had something like 4 or 5 classrooms of baby infants. So that's how big the school was. And then my parents actually separated, and my mother didn't want to bring us up in Dublin on her own. She wanted to be closer to her family, but she also didn't want to move back to Ardrahan just yet, because she said she kind of felt like she, I think she was a young woman with 2 kids, and she wasn't sure where she wanted to go, and she was kind of undecided. And she had this friend from Unspidzel, Chundanagaliva, and she was like, why don't you come to Spiddle? And Mum was like, well, firstly, it's the Garry Talks, and we're coming from Dublin, so we don't have any Irish. And she's like, they're grand. So I remember Mum taking me out to Spiddle to stay in a friend's B&B, and I just fell in love with the place. I thought, oh my God, they have a beach outside their house. And it's like, I remember being just dumbfounded by the whole thing, and I thought, this is class. So Mum knew straight away, right, Meghann will be fine. So my brother, because he was that bit older, he would had like friends in Dublin and kind of started playing soccer and different kind of sports. So he was kind of starting to find, I guess, his foundation.
Yeah.
But I've always been very adaptable, I think. So then we moved to Spiddle, spent 5 years there. I was in Scully, he was in Sculania, and then we stayed there for 5 years, and it was incredible because, as I said, we had the beach, and we thought it was so cool. Like, we'd walk home from school and the beach was there, so we just go swimming, and that's what we did all the time. And it was kind of really, it sounds really idyllic, but for us it was. And then my brother was starting secondary school, so then it was decided we would move to Ardrahan, and we built a house beside Granny on the farm. And then I went to my 3rd national school, which was Laban in Ardrahan, and that's where the church was. So yeah, we would have grown up with quite, I suppose, strong Catholic influence because of Granny. And we just, every time you stayed in Granny's house, even when we lived in Spiddle, Mass every Sunday. And then I think I just grew up serving, reading, and always kind of involved in the community, played camogie then. And Ardrahan.
And did you hold on to the Irish when you were living in Ardrahan?
Yeah, so obviously we got immersed in the Gaeilge because we had no choice. I do remember one time being told by the teachers, Meghann, you have to speak Irish in Spiddle, and I was like, what? And I was like, I didn't have a clue what Irish was. But then, of course, I was only 5 going on 6, so it fairly quickly came along. And then I remember when I moved to Ardrahan, the principal knew, he could tell that I had Irish, and he knew where I came from. So like that, he used to make me read out the Irish because I had the kind of, I suppose, the sound. And I always enjoyed it. But I remember the kids used to always be like, why do you sound different when you speak Irish? And I used to be like, oh God, I feel like I'm different.
Yeah.
And it was when I went to Seamount Secondary School that I, again, was reading out the Irish in the class, and the Irish teacher was like, where are you from? And I was like, Ardrahan. And she was like, that's not. She goes, where's that Irish from? And I was like, Spiddle. So then when she realised I came from Spiddle, she really encouraged me, and she really pushed me. And one time we did an exam, and I think everyone in the class failed or got D's. We did really bad. It must have been Mo Cnealach or one of them. And then I remember I came up and she's like, look, girls, if this is the first exam, so, whatever. And she was kind of saying to everyone, look, it's okay. It's something we'll work on. And I went up and she was like, you should have done a lot better than this. Why didn't you do better? And I was like, what? And she goes, you should be doing better. And she was like, you need to you got the Irish, you need to look after it. So that from then on, I was so blessed. Every time I went to school, I always had a really encouraging Irish teacher. And then I loved the language, and I ended up getting a degree then off Gaeilge because of it. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I always kept it because I was like, you know what? It's actually a lovely language. And it was TG Cahir. I went when I was in, I think, 5th year. So I actually moved secondary school as well. Love moving schools. So I went from Seamount, which was an all-girls convent, and after my junior year, then I moved to Gort Community School, which is a mixed, bigger school. And the Irish teacher there also knew that I loved Irish, and she brought us out to TG Cahir one day for a just kind of a tour because she knew someone that worked there. And I remember at the time Daithí O'Shea was in Weather. It's that was back in
mad.
Yeah,
because you're working with them now,
So it's so funny, and I remember thinking, and I was like, this is so cool. And because TG Cahir was that bit smaller, they let us into this newsroom, they let us go around the whole place.
They're brilliant, yeah.
They gave us all access. Now I think everyone in the class knew that I was just in awe. I was like, this is amazing. And Daithí did a weather link and let us stay in the room with him while he did it. And then from that day on, I was like, this is definitely what I want to do. So the teacher then arranged for me to come back on my own and do work shadowing. So I came back to TG Cahir and did a bit of work shadowing when I was that age. And I think from there on, I was like, right, love the Gaeilge, love the media, but didn't want to move to Connemara for the Cummersod course. And I was like, how can I always want to go to UL? I was like, UL, I went to the campus when I was...
The Cummersod course now is a full-time college course?
Yeah, out in... is that in Carrow? I think it is, yeah. But I always wanted to go to UL because I went to the campus when I was about 12 or 13 and I was hugely into sport. And when I walked on that campus, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm coming here. I don't care what it is. And then lo and behold, the day we're filling out the CO, we had the books going, and I was going through UL because I was like, I'm not going anywhere else. And I was like, UL were like, I think my first 4 or 5 choices. I was so determined to go. And lo and behold, there was a course on Gaeltacht na Manora, Irish and New Media. And I was like, that's my course. And the points then like weren't that high. So I was like, I don't even have to work that hard. I was like, if I just work enough, I could get that course. And I did.
Brilliant. Your parents separated when you were age 5.
Yeah.
So did you spend much time with your father growing up?
So Dad would have moved to Kildare after they broke up because he was huge into horses, and sure, Kildare is like the horsey county. So he was heavily involved with horses, and he didn't move to Galway until I'm going to say, I possibly was in Seamount, maybe at the end of national school. And he got a cottage in Crowell, which is obviously only down the road from us. And again,
so about 13, 15 years later, really.
Yeah, so we would have spent like holidays with them, but mainly summer holidays because midterms wouldn't have been kind of worth their while going up. But we spent most summers I'd spend longer with them because I loved the horses. Marcus didn't, so he might come for a week or two, but I'd stay maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And then Christmas, to be fair, Dad kind of came to Galway most Christmases, so I spent more Christmas, I think, with him growing up than my mother because we were there all the time. So yeah, he was obviously not there as much when we were small. And it's like time we were in Spiddle, like I wouldn't have seen him. I rarely saw him. But then when he moved to Galway, then I started spending every weekend with him because again, I started riding horses and then we started going to shows together and kind of hanging out together. So I think it kind of was more later when I was an older kind of child that I feel like got to really know him. I think I was almost frightened of him a little bit because Mum would be like, my brother and I would be arguing and she'd be like, I'm ringing your father. And as soon as she pick up the phone, we'd be like, no. So I think we just always saw him as this like, he was always very strong on manners and really kind of strict. He was really strict, I think, and whereas my mother wasn't. So I think I always knew I can't break any rules around my father because, you know, he like, I can't, and have to be on my best behaviour all the time. But then as I kind of got older and kind of like got to know him a bit better, I was like, oh wait, he's not actually as scary as Mum used to think. As you used to pick up the phone to, I was like, sure, what was he going to say to us anyways? And like when I started going to discos, then I was like begging my mum, I'm like, please don't tell Dad. So for a long time, he never knew that I was going to discos. He would have stopped that.
And I know you've told the story so often, but you had mentioned it at the start. I mean, it was really within a short space of time that you lost your brother Marcus and then your father. And I think, you know, you spoke about this recently on News Talk, and it's crazy. It's just becoming a bigger and bigger issue, the amount of road deaths in Ireland at the moment. But if you wouldn't mind, just for those who don't know the backstory of Marcus, if you could tell us what happened.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Marcus moved to Garbally. He was at boarding school. My father went there ahead of him, so it was always that was the plan. I think from as soon as I can remember, Marcus going to Garbally, rugby college. Rugby was very much so part of our life. Horses and rugby. Actually, GA really wasn't. It was only because we lived in Ardrahan. It was at the time all they had was hurling and camogie, so we kind of no choice. So Marcus went to Garbally, absolutely loved it, and was there every week. Like we'd come home every weekend, and then was playing rugby in Garbally, and then decided to join the Gort team as well, just so he could play at weekends. And then, as I said, we were also playing hurling and camogie, so very much so a sporting household.
So at this stage, it was very much just you and your mother, really, if he was in boarding school.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so it was Monday to Friday, Mum and I. And then at the time, actually, Mum went back to college as a mature student to NUIG doing an arts degree. So what used to happen was when it came to study week, because, you know, she was very much so your typical mature student. I sometimes go to lectures with her and she was one asking questions and I used to be mortified because I was in secondary school and I knew this wasn't cool. And I could see all the like young graduates kind of being like, oh, here we go, the mature student. And I was like sitting beside her being like, oh. And she got on really well with all the lecturers because probably they're all like close to her age. And so then for like study week.
Well, she was enthusiastic as well. There's nothing worse as a lecturer than watching this deadpan face staring back at you.
I know, they probably loved her because she was like always asking questions. And then what actually used to happen was Mum would move into Galway for maybe a couple of weeks around exam time because she obviously really wanted to do well. And then Dad would move into our home house with me. So it was kind of, and then I spent a lot of time with my granny as well next door. So yeah, I think I was always kind of moved around a lot. Not moved around, but like I'd Dad either stay with me for a couple of weeks and then Mum be there for a couple of weeks and I might go to granny or an aunt or an uncle. So I was always kind of going around from house to house, or else I'd be going down staying with dad. And so there's a lot of chopping and changing in my childhood. And then obviously Marcus come home with weekend, and that was probably where I had the most structure in my life, because funny, we were talking about this before we started recording. My granddad was a vet and would have been in the Galway races as well a lot of the time, and a very well known vet around South Galway, North Clare. My brother actually wanted to be a vet, and that was his plan, and he definitely had the brains, but he studied, like, and that's what he wanted to do. So he'd get the head down, and then when he'd come home with weekends, he'd make our schedule, especially because he was in Leaving Cert and I was in Junior Cert. And he was like, right, we'll get up, we'll have breakfast, then we go study for a while, then we can watch a bit of TV, then we're going to go out to puck the ball, then we're going to do more study. So sometimes then I'd be like, oh, I don't want to study, like I'm in Junior Cert. So I'd kind of sneak into the sitting room and I'd like turn on the TV really low, and next time I'd hear the footsteps, and he'd be like, you're meant to be studying, and I'm like, no.
But you wanted to work in media.
Yeah. I was like, why don't I just sit here and read about biology? I was like, I don't want to do this.
So was he like a fatherly figure, do you think, in the house?
Very much so, yeah. As soon as dad left, when dad was gone, Marcus was 6 or 7. He was strict. Marcus was very strict with me. He knew I was going to the discos and he had a problem with it. So he used to give it out to mom, being like, she's not allowed to wear skirts, she has to wear jeans, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, the girls are wearing skirts. And I used to be constant debate in our house. So I used to love if dad and Marcus weren't around the night of discos on, so I could actually get out the door in whatever I wanted to wear. So yeah, Marcus was very much so my father figure, and he'd make me clean my room, and he was one, like I said, that time was like study. So then what happened was his Leaving Cert mocks were maybe a week or two before mine, or he finished earlier than mine. And he came home a few days earlier from Garbly because he finished his exams. Actually, I was still doing mine. And then, of course, actually, it was funny. He obviously was finished his mock, so he could have a few days off, whereas I still had to study every day because he was in the house. And he'd be like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh my God, can I just have it time off? I'm sick of studying. And I was like, well, it's only the mocks. And he was like, no, that's the wrong attitude. He's like, these are like to prepare you for the exams. So that fateful Friday then, we were there, and I was in the pony club, which is between Ardrahan and Gort, and dad actually was the teacher. So I was in the village, and Marcus went off to rugby training in Gort that night, and I was in the village waiting for dad, and dad was like so late coming, and I was like, oh no, he was never a good timekeeper to begin with, but like when he was teaching a lesson, I was like, surely he won't be late because all the parents will be there with all the ponies and all the kids. And then I remember then eventually the lorry comes around the corner from the Crockwell Road, and I got in, and I was like sat up, and next time I saw a load of like blood and like handkerchief like covered in blood, and I was like, oh. And then as he was driving, I took a little glance, and I could just see that he was like pumping blood, my dad. And I looked, and I was like, oh no. And then he was like, it's fine. So basically what happened was he was trying to load the horse into the lorry, and the horse wouldn't go on. So dad was like, I'll just jump on his back and I'll ride him up. But the horse jumped, and dad caught his head in the top of the lorry. But instead of course, like, this is just typical my father. Instead of going to maybe seek medical help, he decided, no, I'm going to teach the lesson first, and then I'll sort it out. So he arrived into the yard, and obviously he came out of the lorry, there was blood everywhere, and all the parents were like, Maxie, like, what happened? And he was like, it's fine, I'll do the lesson and then I'll sort it out. So the parents were like, absolutely not. So someone was there with the car, so he was like, look, I'm going to take you to the GP in Gort, because that's where dad's GP was. One other parent said, I'm going to take the lesson, so like we'll look after Meghann, because I actually had a stallion at the time. So dad was like, oh no, I'll be fine. So as the parents all stood and were like, we're actually not letting you get into this arena. You go to like, in case you've like, concussion or anything. Yeah. So dad went off up to the GP. I was riding the horse around, and the lesson went ahead. And then I was standing in the corner waiting for my turn. And next thing I noticed an ambulance going down the Gort Road from Ardrahan. So I was like, oh, it's Friday evening, it's kind of unusual. And then a while later I noticed from the Lochray Road, because where the pony club happened to be was kind of on a hill, and then I could see an ambulance come from the Lochray Road in towards Gort. And I was like, oh, must be something on happening. But they weren't going very fast. They had the blue lights on, but they didn't have the sound on. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, in my, I guess, being 15, I thought, I bet you they're bringing like someone home from the hospital to a nursing home. I don't know if they even do that, but that's what I thought at the time. Again, completely didn't think anything. And then I suddenly went, oh no, Dad went to the doctor. Has something happened, Dad? And I was like, oh no. And then I was kind of panicked. And next time I turned, and there was Dad back standing at the corner of the arena, big, massive bandage around his head, like sorted out. So I was like, oh, it's not Dad. So I was like, oh, it must be just, it's nothing. So that was fine. And then we left and we went back home, and Dad dropped me back to our home house in Ardrahan and went to drop the horse home. And then next time I went in, and my mother was completely flustered. She's like, something's wrong. And I was like, what are you on about? And she's like, Marcus isn't home. And I was like, yeah, but he's at rugby. And she's like, he said to be home at 9:00. And I swear it was like 9:05. I was like, Ma'am, it's literally 5. She goes, no, something's wrong. And I was like, what are you on about? And his shirt was laid out because he was going out that night in Galway, and the shirt ironed and everything ready to go. And I was like, you're being dramatic. And then she rang our neighbour whose son was driving, and they said there's been an accident. So ma'am knew, she said actually before she even got the call, she said something in her gut said something's happened. She said she could feel it. So long story short, we found out that it was the accident, that it was Marcus in it. Dad in the meantime rang because someone rang him. So it was really strange. Like, it was other people that kind of told us. So someone rang Dad and said, look, there's been an accident. Marcus is in the car. You all need to get into hospital. So we did. My uncle got, my mum and I drove us in. Dad had dropped the horse off. He got a lift into town as well. And then we went in and we got in and the hospital was just mayhem, and it was like Friday evening, and it was like loads of people coming and going, and then suddenly like loads of neighbours started turning up, and I was like, oh, why is there so many neighbours in Galway tonight? It's really strange. Not clicking. Everyone was coming in to see how Marcus was. Unfortunately, and like desperately sad, our neighbour, the driver, died instantly. So I think word had gotten out that he had passed away, but everyone knew Marcus was still alive. So I think everyone was coming in to see, I guess, to show support as well. So we were just told, the next few hours we'll figure out what's happened. Like, he'll go into surgery and then, we'll figure it out. And I was like, all right, Grant. Again, being 15, thinking, like, if everyone said Marcus was fine, so Marcus is fine. And then
had you seen him yet?
No, we hadn't seen him, but Mum at this stage was like, I want to see my son. I need to see my son. So Mum was kind of like very much so very high energy and really kind of stressed out. Dad was actually remained quite calm. I was kind of going, I don't know why everyone's really bothered. Like, it's hard, like, because you're so young and you also think it's never going to happen to you. And I also had bought Mars bars on the way into the hospital for him because he loves them, and especially after playing sports, they were like his energy thing. So I picked him up a few Mars bars. I was like, geez, I'll give him them now afterwards. And on the car in, we were actually discussing, we were actually saying, oh God, I hope he's not badly injured, because he loves his sports so much. Like, it would actually...
And did you know the driver had died at this stage?
We did, yeah. We found out. And that's, we said too, we discussed, we're like, okay, how are we going to, oh no, his funeral now will be coming up, and like, we'll have to get Marcus for that now. And how do we tell Marcus? Do we tell him tonight? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should wait. We'll probably find out because, his phone. And then we're like, oh, this is going to crush Marcus now as well, because they were quite good friends. And obviously they're in the car together that night, and he just leaving her coming up. And we were going through so much in our head. Like, that's the discussion we were having. We weren't talking about death. We were talking about how do we look after Marcus after this. And we did discuss if he was, how badly injured he'd be, that it would really, like, he'd find it so difficult. So then that was fine. And then eventually Mum was like, doctors, please, I need to see him. So they were like, look, we'll let you see him. He has to go to surgery, but we'll let you see him before we get to bring him to surgery. So we got to see him, but he wasn't awake. And there was a lot of machines and everything, but they just said, look, be careful, talk to him, but we need to make this quick. So Mum and Dad were chatting away and kind of saying what they want to say. And Mum was very much so like, I love you and all this, and saying all that to him, and same with Dad. So I went up to him and I went into his ear and I was like, I got you Mars bars. I have them with me. I'll give them to you afterwards. Like, that's all I said. I didn't think I was saying goodbye to him. I thought I was, I'd have your Mars bars for you. So that was fine. And then he went up to surgery. In the next few hours, we were all just sitting in A&E. And the place at this stage really started to get busy. His friends came in, neighbours came in, more people heard. There was just, and that night it kind of came to a stage where I think anyone that was just in there for their own reason found out our story. And then it very much so became, okay, 15 minutes have gone, okay, half an hour is gone. So we're kind of doing a countdown every 15 minutes, like, right, because we were told he'd be in surgery for about 2 hours. And then we were an hour and 45 minutes in when my aunt came down and was like, oh, Meghann, need to bring you up now to where they are, because half the family and friends went to this floor near, I think, where the surgery was taking place, and a gang of us stayed in the A&E reception. So then she came down and I was like, okay, Grant. I was like, oh, he must be awake. So I was kind of going, and I'm going in now to see him. So I went up then, and I remember Dad was lying down in a hospital bed, because obviously he'd hit his head, so he was in a lot of pain. So he was lying down in a bed. I just remember being in this ward, and it was empty, and I remember thinking, why is this ward empty? And why is my dad lying down and ran in the bed? And it was kind of all just all those things you kind of take in. Yeah. And then like the doctor and surgeon came out, and they come out and they started talking about his injuries and X, Y, and Z. And it kind of felt like they're going on for ages. And then they just eventually were like, and he didn't survive. And I remember thinking, sorry, what? It's like, what did he just say? And then just all hell broke loose. Like, Mum fell on the ground. Dad was obviously out of the bed at this stage. He was trying to pick her up. My aunts and uncles, everyone was just pulling at each other. Everyone was roaring. And it just became this like weird scene of like what you see in TV or something. And I remember just being like, no, this isn't happening. This is really, really strange. Like, this can't be happening to us, because why would this wouldn't happen to us? Which most people, when you lose someone tragically, you think this could never happen to us. And unfortunately it had, and that was reality. And we actually got to see Marcus maybe mom said, I want to see my son. So they said, yeah, look, we will. So to be fair to them, they brought him to this private room and they laid him out for us and we got to come in and see him. And like, he just looked like he was asleep. And funny enough, he had this mole on his face. Now, we never really noticed it. Like, I didn't think it was noticeable. And he used to say to mom, he's like, oh, I think I might get rid of that. And mom's like, no, it's like your beauty spot. And he was like, no, he goes, I don't know, I think I might. Yeah, I think I might. And I don't know how, but he lost it in the crash. And he was gone from his face. And it was like, mom was like, where's his mole? And mom's like, where's his mole? And then we were like, it's gone. And it's just funny because it was something he said he wanted gone. And there was no cuts on his face. There was no marks. It was like, it just disappeared. So that night then we had a lot of people coming in and going. We actually, anyone that was in the hospital, everyone got to come up and say hello to him and say goodbye, because we kind of felt everyone was waiting for hours. I think it was 4 or 5 in the morning. We eventually got home. And I think from then on, it was just, I guess, shock had hit, not just our family and friends, the entire community, because suddenly you'd lost 2 18-year-olds who were very popular in our village. We both live on either side of the village, like we're neighbours from each other. And the shock waves went not just around Ardrahan, but the whole community, because, Cahill was in school in Gort, Marcus was in Garbally, they both played rugby, they both played GA. And it kind of shocked us both was how popular they actually were with so many people, because that day when we had Marcus back home in the house, we were meant to, I think, have the house open for maybe 3 hours, whatever the standard is. I think we were 6 or 7 hours, because the crowds were just coming and coming and coming, and we couldn't like stop. We were going to close the door, so we just let them come in, and it just went on and on and on and on and on. And I'd never seen so many people at a funeral in all my life. I was like, we were like, how many people did he know? But just, I think that's a reflection of the two men and the kind of people they were. They were real like pillars of the community and really popular, and I think a lot of people really looked up to them. So yeah, that was a huge reflection on their lives. And like, we gave Marcus what I could, like, I know you can't say, that people go, oh geez, that was a great funeral, but we gave him like a super send off. And his funeral, there's moments that they'll always stand out to me because it was just so powerful. The Garbally choir sang, we had, just so many people were there, and it just felt like a really special day for him, and really kind of powerful send off. And I think it was just a pure reflection of the kind of person he was. So obviously that day, that just completely, our lives changed forever. And I didn't go to school for quite a few weeks, but then I had the junior cert coming up, and then I remembered I'd sit at home then, and I was like, I have to study. Because the training that Marcus put into me studying when he lived in the house every weekend, I was like, well, I know how to study now because he taught me. So I was like, do you know what? I didn't want to obviously do the junior cert. And I think at the time it was kind of a question of, should she even sit the junior cert because what she's been through? And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do it for him, because if I don't do it for him, like, I know he'd be so annoyed if I didn't do it. And I was like, I'll do it for him. And I ended up getting a really good junior cert, and I owe it all to him, because he helped me through it, because I had no interest in sitting in any exams. And to be fair, like, I remember a lot of his friends had their leaving cert, and we were all like, pray to Marcus, ask Marcus to help you. So an awful lot of people came back to us after they got the results, and they were like, I asked Marcus for help. So we all said, like, he was working overtime up there because he was helping everyone with their exams. So yeah, that was Marcus.
And I think when, you lose someone, you go through the motions, you know, with the funeral and there's people still visiting and so on. And people experience grief at different stages. But when do you think it really hit you that you'd lost your brother?
Do you know what? It actually didn't hit me, I'd say, that was 2005. I'd say it all hit me during that Masters in Galway, actually. So when I actually met you in Galway with him, I was probably at one of the lowest points in my life. Dad died then in August 2006, a year and a half later. He always had, as far back as I can remember, my dad had bad health. So when he was 21, he had Goodpasture syndrome, which is a kidney disease, and got a kidney transplant. And my mother remembers being in the convent in Gort at the time, praying for a local man that was getting a kidney transplant. She didn't know who he was at the time, but she knew of him because of his granddad being the vet, because he was everyone's vet. And so she remembers being in school praying for this guy to get his kidney. And from then on, Dad just had an awful lot of health complications. So I remember as a child going into hospital.
And that was your dad she was praying for?
Yeah.
Without knowing?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was Dad, yeah. Granny said my mother's mother, everyone remembers it because it was, transplantation was so unheard of at the time. And then for the vet's son to be getting his kidney transplant was, a lot of people were praying for him as well and supporting the family. And from then on, he just always kind of had issues, and he had a triple heart bypass in the mid-90s, I think it was. So my parents were separated, but I remember Mum bringing us up to Dublin to go into the hospital to see him before he went in. So he always was in and out of hospital, and, I always knew he had bad health, but he also had a great life. Like, my dad had a super life, and he really, you know, he really had that you only live once attitude, and, you know, he never let his health hold him back. If anything, he probably lived more than most people in his short life. But after Marcus died, you know, we all naturally got sick, like chest infections, and kidney infections, which are all linked to grieving. And, you know, we're constantly sick. We're constantly on antibiotics and in and out to the doctor. And it was just it's all part of the process. Like anyone that goes through grief will tell you, you know, the physical pain is nearly worse than the mental pain and the emotional pain. And then, like I was in and out with different infections all the time, but I was young. I was healthy, and sport, I think, and school really kept me going, because when I was in school, I could kind of escape it. And I think that for me was, and studying actually did, in the end, studying helped me because it got me out of my own head. And I was determined to go to the University of Limerick. So I was like, I'm determined to get my Leaving Cert. But then Dad just got sick, and because he was unwell, he couldn't fight it the way we could. So he just got worse and worse and worse. And then he went to South Africa not long after Marcus died, and went over for a few weeks, and then that turned into a few months, and then got really sick over there. And then when he came, it was Marcus's first anniversary, and I was like, he'll definitely be home. He won't miss Marcus's first anniversary. And, you know, sorry, he was in hospital, and I was like, he wouldn't miss Marcus's first anniversary. Like, he definitely wouldn't. And even if he had to be brought in a wheelchair, brought in on a hospital bed, he would have been there. So I'll never forget my dad, my brother's godmother, my aunt, was reading a Prayer of the Faithful for Dad for that exact reason. And we said to her, at the very last minute, just look up, just in case he comes in, because he might come in at the very last minute. So she had two versions up in the altar, and one was pray for Marcus's dad, Maxie, who's unwell in hospital, pray for Maxie, who's unwell but is here with us today. And I kept turning around, because I was like, every time I heard a noise, I was like, this is him. But he never came. And then I think that was the big moment that we all went, right, he's not well, because my dad used to, now, sorry for any medical professionals.
But if he gets kicked by a horse or whatever, he still gets back in the tractor.
Dad used to be in hospital with something going on, and he'd signed himself out to go to the RDS horse show. He'd sign himself out to go to a ball. He'd sign himself out to go to a party. He wouldn't miss anything. And we'd be like, Dad, you go back then. And he'd go to the party and then go back into hospital. He was like, you can't do that. But there was no telling him. He just wanted to do it his way. And that was, it's gas, because Frank Sinatra, My Way, was his song. And that was his funeral song, because everything he did was his way. And you couldn't tell him. So, that summer then he was just in hospital, and I just knew he wasn't coming out, and I was going to visit him most days in and out, and he wasn't well at all. And then the RDS horse show was coming up, which was our favourite event, and I was in August, and I was like, I wonder will he pull out now for the horse show, because he loves the horse show so much, and that's his number one thing. And then it was getting closer to the week, he actually started deteriorating, and then the week off he just went really downhill. And his favourite competition in the main arena were the Puissance, which is the big high wall, and the Aga Khan, which is the Nations Cup. They were always his number one and two. He just loved them two competitions, and they're a day after each other. And that night between the two competitions, he died. And we all, and again, we're like, he did it during the horse show. And then we were told that the next day in the main arena, they announced his death. And for him now, that would have been a huge moment, because that was his favourite thing. And, you know, I suppose that was the easiest way to tell all our horsey friends, because everyone was, even that week, I think people were texting his phone, being like, where are you, Maxie? Because the horse show never went to, Maxie was always at the horse show. So again, his way, did it his way. So then I had to go into Leaving Cert, and I kept using study and exams for distraction. So I think Dad died on the 12th of August, and then 2 weeks later, his mother Olga, his mother, my granny, she died. And that was the first day I was meant to start the Leaving Cert year. So I was late going into school then, and I missed a few days, and then I came in, and I just remember the principal saying to me,
And you're in a different school now as well.
I'd moved to Gort, yeah. But you know what? Everyone was so good, because everyone knew the story, and everyone was so good to me. I have to say, the teachers were brilliant in both schools, and the students, because everyone, when Marcus died, we were all only 15, and my friends in Seamount did a rota. I didn't even know this, but they made a rota behind my back. So I didn't go to school for a few weeks after he died. I stayed at home, and every evening the school bus would pull up, and one of them would get off and stay with me. And then the next night someone else would come off the school bus, and the bus driver knew, and everyone knew. So everyone, and they were only 15, and they all loved Marcus as well. They used to love coming to his house. Everyone loved coming to my house weekend because Marcus was there, and they all got on really well with them. But they all took turns I was never alone. And then my mum, her sisters, she's one of 11. So her sisters, someone would stay with her every night. So the house was, for weeks, we were constantly had people there. So that was those little moments that really helped us, because we always had someone with us. And then when I went back to school, again, teachers were like, Meghann, you don't need to partake. Just sit there. And if you want to partake. If you don't, you don't. And then I think I remember after a few weeks being like, I kind of want to partake. So I'd start putting the hand up, and then the teachers would be like, go on. So then they'd let me in. And then suddenly I was like, no, I was like, I have to do the junior cert for Marcus. Then when I went into Leaving Cert, then same thing in Gort. Teachers were like, I actually had a year head who used to take me out of class every week or so for a chat, just walk around the corridors for a little chat. You're like, how are you getting on? I'm like, great. I'm like, I love it here and I'm great crack. And he was like, no, but how are you really getting on? You know, you've been through a lot. He was like, look, I know I should be saying you should be studying for the Leaving Cert. I know you get your head down and we put pressure on the exam students. He was like, but just get through it. He's like, you don't have to. He's like, points don't matter. You can repeat if you have to. And I was like, no, I'm going to UL. I was like, I'm going to UL. So I think by teachers telling me to mind myself and to not worry about books, I actually then in turn wanted to do them proud because they were so supportive. And I was like, no, I'm going to do you all proud because you've all looked after me so well. So then I went through the 4 years UL. I always say kind of unscathed. So I think maybe that's why I loved UL so much, because I got to be my own person down there. Not many people knew my story, so I could kind of be Meghann for once, because for a lot of time everyone knew about Marcus and Maxie and obviously the grief that came with it. So I got away a few years there really unscathed and kind of very much so away from escapism from all the grief. But then when I started my master's in Galway, suddenly I was like, oh great, I love socialising as well. So I was like, no, the master's now, I'll get the head down and I'll study really hard and I'll get through it all. But that summer beforehand, a lot of transition happened. Obviously I lost my comfort blanket of UL. Everyone started to suddenly go off to their jobs or different masters in different places. I was in a relationship that broke up. I lost a lot of friends as well. And suddenly things were just completely changing. I couldn't handle the change. And then suddenly I was in the masters in Galway and I was like really struggling to cope. And then I thought I was like actually losing my mind because I couldn't seem to concentrate. I started to develop a bad relationship with alcohol where I'd actually go out and drink till I blacked out because the pain was so intense that I was like, this is the only way I can get rid of the pain. But then from the blackouts, I'd wake up then in fear and anxiety because of what happened. And then instead of like maybe addressing what was going on internally, I just go out again the following night and then I go out the following night. So then I just developed this really unhealthy relationship with socialising.
Were you living away from home then as well?
I was living in Galway City, yeah. And things just starting to suddenly spiral and I didn't know what was going on. But I was like, I thought I was losing my mind. I actually at the time couldn't put it to Marcus and Dad. I didn't see the two things as one. I just thought, because I thought maybe a few years had passed and I got through without bad grief, I thought that I'd actually skipped it. I was like, oh, maybe I've skipped grief because I read a book and it said, oh, it takes 5 years to grieve. And after 5 years, you accept it. But I hit the 5 year mark and I was like, oh my God, I've actually escaped grief. And I was like, I've managed to not grieve. And I was like, oh, great. But then suddenly things just went boom and just fell apart.
You suppressed it so long.
So long. And I always say to people, it was like a bottle of water that was full and just kept filling. I kept trying to put the cap on and it just one day just exploded. And that's what happened. It literally just exploded. And then one day my mother came into me and she's like, right. She goes, I've been grieving for years now. I've been in and out of therapy. And she just looked at me and she was like, you need to grieve. And I was like, what? And she's like, you're grieving. I was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, I'm losing my mind. And she was like, no, you're grieving. So that for me was a huge moment to realize what was actually going on. And then suddenly I had to start to decompress and go through every little piece. And as I started to go into therapy, I realised that it wasn't just the death of Marcus. It wasn't just the death of Dad. It also was the separation of my parents from when I was 3, 4, 5 years old and all that moving and all that transitioning. And while I did adapt really well to everywhere, I never, I think, dealt with all that change that was constantly happening all through my childhood. So there was a lot to unpack. And I'm going to say it took me a good 5 to 10 years to really unpack everything. And in that time, I was still moving, trying to get a job in media. And actually during that master's, before I went to my work experience at Galway BFM, I remember one time looking around and saying to my mum, I was like, I'm never going to be able to work. I was like, I was so depressed and so dark at the time. I thought I'd never work in media. I thought I'd never work at all. I thought I was going to have to move home to my home house, go on antidepressants, and I thought I'd never come out of that. I just thought that was going to be my cycle. And I remember one time actually almost accepting it, being like, well, this is just going to be my life now. I'm just going to be depressed and just not do anything with myself. And then I went through that phase for quite a long time until eventually I was like, if I don't pull myself out of this, I don't live like this. And I kind of think I started to actually get fed up of being sorry and being sad. And I got fed up of being depressed. And I thought, I can't do this. And then I was like, then I kind of started to think about Marcus and Dad. And I was like, oh my God, they'd be disgusted right now with me. They'd be like, what are you doing? They'd be like, get up and get out and do something with your life. And I actually went to see a healer one time. And Heidi said to me, she was like, Marcus told her that my life was so boring to look at. He was like, you're boring. He's like, you need to do something with your life. What are you doing? You're boring. You're living at home. Do something. And I remember them being like, I'm not boring. I'm going to show you. And then I think that's what I needed. I needed that kind of spurn and something to kind of wake me up and go, get out there and do something with your life. And then slowly but surely then I started to kind of like, right, I want to be happy again. And then suddenly when I started to have happy moments, I was like, oh, I actually really liked that. I want more of that. I don't want to be sad anymore. So then I just suddenly then a new cycle started where I had to kind of deal with everything head on. And I won't lie, like I had a lot of fallbacks all through the years. I had a lot of setbacks and I take 2 steps forward and suddenly 10 steps back. And I was like, oh, I'm back here again. And I was like, oh no. But then it was a like I mentioned at the start, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's exactly what grief is as well. So I've had to learn that the hard way and just let it happen and let it go and just start to kind of deal with it. Like if I get a dark day now, I kind of have to go, right, this is just part of the process. You'll get through it. It's just having less dark days now than I did previously.
Yeah, like I find for me with dark days, it's kind of focusing on just trying to get good sleep, staying away from the booze, bit of exercise, try and eat healthy. It's kind of like those 4 things or so, kind of just to steady the ship. But how dark did it get for you? Like, were you contemplating just giving up on everything, ending it all, or were you able to stay on top of things?
So I knew I didn't want to die, but I had suicidal thoughts. Like I went through a very dark period where I used to pray that God or whoever was there listening to me would switch my place with Marcus, because I thought I saw my mother's pain and my father's pain when he was still alive. I saw how great it was and how destructive it was that I thought I actually convinced myself that they'd be happier with Marcus than me, that maybe that life would be easier for them and they wouldn't be so sad. Because I was like, oh, they're really sad over Marcus. I don't think they'd be that sad though without me. So I genuinely used to pray, like, please, like, take me instead. And like, that was such a dark thought for a 15-year-old, but like, that's what it was. And then as I got older, I realised that, okay, that's not healthy. And then as I started going into therapy, I was put on antidepressants because I went to the doctor and I was in such a bad place that I just needed something to numb the pain. And they did. And they really numbed me. So I just was kind of, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't sad. I just was dull. And I remember thinking after about 6 months on them, I was like, oh, I'm not even having fun anymore.
Yeah.
I'm having nothing. I'm just like cruising along. And after a while, I was, God, I kind of want, that's when I think I realised I have to do something about this. I don't want to, first I was like, I don't want to stay on these antidepressants for the rest of my life. Secondly, I was like, I need to do something about my life because it's not fun. But I knew coming off them was going to bring the dips as well. So I was like, right, coming off them is going to, the grief is still all there. You haven't dealt with it. Because I didn't deal with it. When I was on the antidepressants, I wasn't dealing with anything. I just was numb. And I was like, right, when you come off these, you're going to take a serious dip. So, but you have to face it on. I was like, I knew the only way I was going to get through it was to face it on. And that's what I did. And I had to go through it. And I knew it was going to be a really tough and hard road. And I met some really great friends in NUIG who are like my best friends today. But I always said to them, I was like, when I met them, I was at my lowest low. And I think they just accepted me for what I was. And they knew, I think maybe they knew that there was someone else behind there. And I think they knew I was maybe covering up a lot, and they stuck with me through it. And to this day, like if I'm not feeling great, I know I can just pick up the phone to one of them, like having a bit of a tough day here, and they'll just be like, right, and they'll talk to me and kind of help me get through it. So huge support network. And as you mentioned about sleep, I wasn't sleeping at the time because I was just so messed up. But then I kind of got back into good routine, and I stepped away from the partying for a while, and kind of, because I love socializing, I still do. And like, I love going out for my few drinks with my friends. So I was like, I'm not enjoying my socializing anymore because I'm actually abusing it. I'm not like, and I was like, no, I need to get back to a healthy relationship with socializing and a healthy relationship with alcohol. And that's what I did. And then I was able to kind of go out and enjoy a few glasses of wine and actually be like, this is a really nice glass of wine, instead of trying to like knock it back. And then I was like, I need, this blackout thing is not doing any favors for me. So I kind of had to reevaluate my entire life. And that's what I did. And then I kind of got good again, and then I kind of ran ahead, and then I fell back again. And I managed then to come off the antidepressants with the help of my GP, and get kind of have a healthy way to release. And then a couple of years later, I thought I was doing great, and then I was living up in Dublin, but I was working, and I lived in London, for a year and a half. Got an internship with MTV, which ended up being huge.
That's right,
massive, like a huge career step. And sometimes I think about that, and I'm like, did I actually do that? And that was 10 years ago. And that for me was massive. But the problem was, when I was over there, I wasn't dealing with my grief. I just was, again, escapism. I was away from it all. So it was brilliant. And London was super, because I did learn though to London how to be on my own. And I kind of got to like my own company, which was huge. But suddenly I came back to Ireland and all my demons were still here. And I was like, oh, I thought they'd kind of disappear. But they didn't. They were back in Ireland. So then I had to deal with them again. So I was like, oh God. And then I was living in Dublin, and I was doing unpaid internships. I was on Dublin. Mum was having to support me financially. Couldn't enjoy Dublin because it was so expensive and I wasn't making any money. And then I hit a low point again. And that was 2015. And then I moved home because I was like, I have to deal with this again. And then I ended up going to Pieta House in Tuam. So I started going to a therapist there. And then that was a huge moment for me. So what I've learned over the years, and I say this to people, is like, you actually, when it comes to therapy, you have to find someone you connect with. And for a long time, I went to people that I just simply didn't. And I was like, oh, they don't understand me. And I'm like, nah, that's useless. And nah, it's not working. But for me, which shock, going to a male counsellor that was around the same age as my dad was actually what I needed. So there was a counsellor in Pieta that was roughly the same age as my dad. And I just found such relief there because I guess I could connect to him. And I had the same counsellor then for the weeks I was there. So I think I ended up being there for 8 weeks. And like that, I'd drive to Tuam, I'd go in, and I'll never forget, like, I'd always go in a little bit early and get the tea and biscuits. So I'd sit in the room and I'd have the tea and biscuits. And then I'd go up, and then like all the sessions were so intense. Like I'd be like so upset. Like so exhausted. And then I go back into the tea room and I'd have more tea and biscuits. So I sometimes be there for a few hours because I was like, I wouldn't get back in the car until I was ready to drive or able to drive because I knew like I'd been quite intense. And then I'd do that every week. And then eventually, I remember then when it came to my last session, I was crying because I didn't want to leave my counsellor because I'd disconnected with him so much. And he was like, no, you don't understand the amount of tools you've actually picked up in the last few weeks. And he's like, you need to go now and use them. And he's like, you can't come back for 6 months, but in 6 months, he's like, if you want to come back to me, you can. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm definitely coming back in 6 months. And then 6 months passed and I actually was like, didn't need to. And I was like, I don't need to go back. So that was huge. It was huge learning moments there for me, and a lot. I guess I opened up and cleared out a lot of baggage. And that was 2015, and then in 2016 I ended up moving to Limerick to get a job in radio. And from then on I realised then that I had to really look after myself. So when I have down days, I have to sit with it and I have to kind of go through it and deal with it all in my head. And from then on now, I just kind of know the triggers as well. Like there's triggers for me, like Marcus' anniversary is a trigger, Dad's anniversary is a trigger.
Birthdays, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah, and Christmas is a huge trigger. And Christmas has always been a horrible time, and because Marcus and Dad loved Christmas, and then for years I hated it. I wouldn't even let Mum put up a decoration. And then in the last few years, we both kind of been like, right, our house looks so sad at Christmas time because everyone, and now actually because my aunts and uncles have kids, there's kids around the place, so it's like they'd come in and they'd be like, "Where's your tree? Where's your lights?" And then we were like, oh my God. And like, because kids obviously have that like spirit of Christmas. So now we do. I think we put up a tree in nearly every room and we put up lights and we really make an effort this time. And the last few years we do like properly embrace Christmas. And now I actually enjoy Christmas. I enjoy those few days. I have friends living all over the country, so I can go visit different people and I go out and meet friends from school that I haven't seen in years, and everyone's at home. And I really embrace it because I'm like, do you know what? You kind of have to learn to love things again. And that's what I've had to do the last few years. But as I say, like the good time completely outweigh the bad times now. But it's from all the work and support that I had over the years from friends and family, and all the therapy and the writing and the reading and the actual time and money I invested in my mental health, which I think is hugely important. Like we're very quick to go to the shops and buy clothes and buy ourselves treats and stuff, but like you have to spend money on your mental health as well because it's an investment that will stand to you for years.
Absolutely. What do you do when you're going through a dark day? What do you say to yourself? For me, a lot of it was having to be on my own. Like literally being in a room or a place just completely on my own. And again, like you mentioned, it's kind of cliche, like trying to get a good night's sleep. I read a lot of books that dealt with grief over the years. But I think writing is the most powerful tool you can have, and like pen and paper. I know you can type in your laptop and write in your phone, but I really think the power is in the pen and paper. And sometimes I just sit down, I just write reams and reams and reams. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm writing. I just stay going. But I do find writing, and like again, it's cliche, but actually out in fresh air. Like when you're cooped up in a room for too long, I find anyways, when I'm in a space, my thoughts just spiral. And then one thing will trigger me and then I'll just go off in a spiral. So then I do find just getting out for fresh air. And it's funny, sometimes you'll go out for a walk, and I have in my book I wrote, there's a story about a blind man showed me the light, and it's what happened to me in Battersea Park when I lived in London. There was one day I was really high, like anxious and really stressed and really panicky, and I remember being in the apartment shaking, and I was like, right, just get out to Battersea Park because it's full of dogs as well. So I was get out, get to the greenery, see the dogs. And I remember I was walking along and I was completely like, I wasn't even aware of what was around me. I was just so triggered. And next time I heard this like rattling noise, and I was like, what's that? And then suddenly like flicked my brain, and I looked up and there was a blind man on his own with his walking aid going through Battersea Park. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, that man can't see. But here he is out in this really busy park, which has like trees and uneven ground. But he had his walking stick and he was there just walking away.
And it kind of really woke me up and went, wow, like, you know, you have sight, you can see. And then I actually realized, I was like, you actually have sight, so start looking because you're not looking. And then I kind of looked around and I was like, and there's the Thames and there's the bridges and there's the greenery and there's the trees and the dogs and the statues. And I was like, suddenly started taking notice. And then that moment, because that's they say when you're really anxious, like if you start noticing things around you, it actually brings your brain back. And then suddenly I was like, wow. And I went home and I wrote that story. A blind man showed me the light from that experience. And that became a chapter in my book. So there's little moments like that kind of made me realize and wake up and kind of look at my life and go, actually, do you know what? You had a lot of tragedy and trauma, but you're actually really blessed. You have your health. And what I learned from my dad, your health is your wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. You started working then in Spin Southwest in Limerick, and like I was following your journey online, and every so often we'd kind of message each other, and we're both big fans of The Secret and Manifestation and all that. And I think even to get to that, you need to know what it is you want in life, what your goals are, so you can start manifesting it. But something that really bothered me at the time, and I didn't have the tools to communicate, and I didn't think it was, you know, my place to communicate it with you. But I was so sad and frustrated and angry with the bullying that you were getting online as people started to know you publicly. Again, amazed at how you dealt with it and took it on the chin. But it was just horrible.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with this industry. You put yourself out there, and then especially when you're working in radio, because I don't think people realise when they're texting and commenting under maybe a post from the company, I don't think they realise that you're actually the presenter are looking at those text messages. Now I know, and sometimes now in bigger stations, maybe the producer is like filtering them through. But yeah, I remember just I've gotten comments over my body, I've gotten comments over stuff my beliefs or whatever. And, you know, and it's kind of when you realise that you put yourself out there that unfortunately you're going to get more hate, it's horrible to think. It's like, oh, the more followers you have on Instagram, the more abuse you're going to get. And you just have to, I just had to accept it. And it's kind of sad because then you kind of become numb to the good comments because you're like, if I just, like, cause I find like anyone, like you hear a lot of people say it, I get lovely comments. I'm like, oh, that's really lovely. But then you might get one nasty comment and then that gets into your head. And then it's like, right, now I need to kind of not take on the good comments because then if I let them affect me so much, then the bad comments going to affect me. So then you kind of, again, it's that kind of like numbing of it. And it's not fair either because I think it's so cruel that people can just think that they can say whatever they like. And a lot of them are hiding behind a fake name or a fake fake profile. I remember one time getting comments on a Facebook post. It was one on Spin. I can't remember what the topic was. No, we discussed something on the radio and someone put up a post, and this was on Facebook, was the biggest platform. And what hurt me the most was people that I was friends with on Facebook that liked it. And are people that I knew. And I
likes
was like,
the nasty comments,
yeah.
is it?
And then that actually hurt me more. He's like, you know me. And I was like, you know me as a person. I was like, plus these are all people that hadn't listened to the radio show live. So they were only going by what this guy had said and a lot of stuff again was taken out of context. And I was like, hold on a second. If these people actually sat down and maybe listened to the full show, they would know what the full context was. But like that, a lot of people just want to read the headline, not read the story. So yeah, I kind of found that was just really hard. But I've kind of been, I don't know, do you say it's lucky or blessed that now I actually do get a lot less hate now that I'm not on radio. I don't know, is it because I'm not on radio? But I think maybe because on my social media channels, I just think I'm myself. I'm very real, I'm very authentic, and I don't share stuff or talk about things that like aren't me. I think people know when they watch my Instagram now that they're getting the real me, and they know I'm not like just kind of, I'm not out there just to get likes. I'm not out there just to get kind of interaction. I'm just kind of sharing my day to day. And I think because I'm not maybe...
It's easier to block people as well.
Yeah, well, actually, that's another thing too. Even when people send me messages that like, I'm not even bothered with, I'm like, oh, John, I'm just going to block you. Even if it's not directed at me, I'm like, I just don't really need to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I do hit the block button, mute button as well is another good one. But unfortunately, that's what we have to do. And you're told a lot in this industry, just don't react. You're like, oh, just don't react, just ignore them. And I've kind of an issue with that too, because I think that's not the right message either. Because it's kind of saying to people, if people are not nice to you in life, just ignore them and don't deal with it. Where I think there needs to be a way to deal with them head on and in a constructive way that actually, because I do find sometimes when I do react to people, I was working in Classic Hits and after Spin, and I remember Christmas Day actually, something was like in my head going, look at your email. Someone emailed my Classic Hits email giving out about something they saw on my social media 10 years previous when I wasn't even working in media that they didn't like and gave out about me and started complaining about me. But they sent it to me. And then I replied and I said, hi, how are you? Merry Christmas, by the way, because it was Christmas Day. I said, look, just to let you know, that photo was 10 years ago before I even lived or worked in the industry. And I think it's really unfair that you would try now take me down over something that was posted also when I was in my late teens, early 20s, which is completely not who I am now and it has nothing to do with. And I just really kind of like addressed it in a very like plain manner and said, look, sorry that you were offended by it, and it wasn't even bad. Like when I think back to it, it was like something really silly, and it wasn't even offensive. It wasn't even bad language or anything. And then they go back to me, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Actually, you're right. I now that you explain it to me, actually, yeah. And I was like, but you tried to email my boss because it was addressed to the boss. And I was like, you tried to like take me down without maybe even messaging me first. But now that you've messaged me and talked to me about it, you realise that actually you were in the wrong, and I wasn't in the wrong. And now you apologise to me, but like, but you straight away you tried to take me down without like maybe asking me the question first. So, I don't know, it's a tough industry out there.
No, I got abuse in radio as well. Like I broke my 2 front teeth when I was 9 years of age in the schoolyard. It was basically the day my 9-year-old cousin had died, and I thought I saw him in the yard. So I ran over to him and I fell. Obviously he wasn't there, but broke my 2 front teeth. So I constantly having to get caps when I was young. And Bebo had started. So we were integrating, kind of putting our profile on Bebo in the radio station, maybe putting up quirky little things or doing quizzes or polls or whatever, just trying to make it more interactive for the listener. And I remember people commenting on how ugly my face was with my teeth and stuff like that. And even recently I was at a friend's party, and someone who I've known for years but who hasn't seen me regularly, again, was commenting on saying, geez, you're really letting yourself go. You're putting on a lot of weight and stuff like that.
Christ.
But I was amazed at how much it hurt and it hit me. People are just making comments all the time on other people, and it's just been allowed, or you take it on the chin. And I think really people need to be very aware of the words they use towards others. Absolutely.
And it's funny, I actually heard recently that you just reminded me, a friend, I was meeting friends to watch one of the rugby games or something, and I was coming late. Again, I was coming from work, so I was meeting them in the pub, and one of the girls that was there was I know her through my friend, but I know her kind of well enough, and she was chatting to me, and she was just saying, she's like, oh, I actually was telling I think she said it was girls at work or girls somewhere. She's like, oh, I said that when we were all going out, and I said that you were coming. And one of them actually said, oh, her. And then they looked at my social media. She goes, definitely bought all those followers and definitely slept her way. There's no way she got that career on her own. And I remember sitting there going, do you know what I said? And like, I kind of just laughed, because like, there's probably so many people out there that say those comments about me and probably think that about me because they just choose to want to believe it. And I'm like, if you saw the struggle and the hard work and the hours that I put in to get to where I am, and like my friends then are so supportive. A lot of my close friends don't work in the industry but completely get it, and like they're so good to me. Like I arrive late to things, I have to leave early because I have to go to another job, I'm working weekends, I can't go on girls trips, and
you're after cancelling a trip to Naples now because of work.
Exactly. And then like sometimes I say to the girls, like the Galway races, actually that's become our annual thing now, because it's something that I know I'll always be at, so they're happy enough to come. But like last year I was up and down, we actually had a table, and like I was up and down like a yo-yo because I had stuff to do, and they're so like, they're good as well. Like sometimes I'm lucky, I sometimes get sponsored clothes to wear, or someone might ask me to wear a headpiece. So the girls know that I have to get content for social media. So they're like, right, Meghann, we get you out now to get photos. How about we go over here? How about we go over there? And like, it's those little things where they understand that sometimes I have to do work even when we're together socially. But they're happy to like support me and help me, and they're happy to just hold the camera for me. And I have been working at the Women's Guinness Six Nations, and I've been travelling around Ireland, and I'm going to England for the Twickenham game. And like the girls know, like they're coming to hold the tripod, because that's what happens when you come to me with, I'll invite you as my plus one, but you're coming to work. But they get it, and they never complain, and they'd never once gone, oh God, she's just like, I can't believe she's working. They completely support me, and they're always saying, look, if there's anything else we can do to help you. And that's what you need in the industry, and they get it, and they did. And I feel sorry sometimes and bad that like, they're actually hearing comments sometimes more than me. So like maybe sometimes I could be sheltered from comments, whereas my friends are hearing what other people are saying, and then they're having to defend me. And like, I think sometimes it can hurt them more than me. And even my mother, like she's on social media, so she can see comments, and it's her that I have to say, don't reply to anyone. I was like, don't mind them. And my family, my aunties, all my family see comments, and they're like getting frustrated. And I'm like, look, just don't let it affect you, please. It's like, it's me, unfortunately, that's getting it, but like try not to be hurt by it. And obviously they just want to defend me, and I'm like, please don't rise to it, because these people are not worth your time. But like, it's just, yeah, I think people forget that there's real people behind I think they sometimes think you're on TV or if you're on radio or if you're working or if you're on social media and Instagram, that you're just almost not real.
Yeah.
They're indestructible.
But if someone does make a comment on your body, like, how do you actually deal with that? Like, it's fine being all, it's grand, but really, like, how do you filter that?
In my 20s, it would have really affected me. And I would have been like, oh God, should I change this? Should I do that? And unfortunately, in this day and age, cosmetic surgery and Botox and filler is hugely popular. And I don't like the way it pushed so much on social media. And I don't like the way it promoted so much on social media, because I think when I was in my 20s, I was very impressionable, and I almost felt pressured and fell under the pressure and felt like that I should have gotten something done because everyone else was getting it done.
Yeah.
Even though in your 20s, I don't think you should be getting any work done. Like you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
And even now, now as I said earlier about being in my 30s, I have kind of grown this inner confidence where now I work out a lot. I exercise quite a bit, more so for my head, but it's also to keep fit and healthy. I eat well, I look after my skin, I drink all the water, I do all the bits, but I still like my socialising and the crack. But it doesn't affect me anymore, because I always know now when people make a comment to you, it's like the old age school bullying thing. It's a lack of confidence and it's an issue within themselves. It's nothing to do with you personally. Unfortunately, it feels very personal, but it really doesn't bother me anymore because I know who I am. I know how I look, and I even say to myself, like, I'm a bit of my dad and a bit of my mum. Like I'm them, and I'm not going to change my appearance because I feel pressured on social media, because I meet people who know my mother and they're like, God, you're the image of Pauline. And then I meet people who know my dad, and obviously my dad's dead now, and they're like, oh my God, you're such a Scully. And like, I take pride in that, because I'm like, it's nice to know that I look like a bit of my parents. And, I do look quite like my brother as well, who's no longer with us. So I'd be afraid to change anything about my appearance in case I lost my look. And I think your look is an individual to you. And that's the message I'd like to portray to younger people who feel the pressure to maybe succumb to what comments people are making. And I just think we're very quick to try change the external, which I think like you have to work on the internal, because that probably is where the issue actually lies. It's not external, it's just really internal. And again, it's the pressure of social media and seeing all these.
Because it's becoming normalized now, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think like reality TV is so much to answer for, and, people are constantly getting tweakments, as they call them. And, you have to remember, a lot of these people in Hollywood have loads of money and have access to all these people all the time to get all this work done. But I think, it's a lot of money to get anything done. And I think for young people, I think it's just so important to kind of, I know it's cliche, but love yourself first and then maybe see how you feel about getting work done. I think very quick people are very fast to go in and change their look and their appearance, and you're changing your DNA as well. Like if you're putting in things, fillers, and changing your shape, your face, like you're changing who you are.
No, because a lot of people just age beautifully, naturally, don't they?
And I think that's, we need to be promoting positive aging instead of hear about all this preventative. I was like, I think what's going to happen if we're not careful is we're going to have massive mental health issues around aging. And like, it's part of life, it's part of the process. Like my mother let her hair go grey there a couple of years ago. She said she got sick of dyeing it. Actually, she said she was going to stay dyeing it until I got married, and then she realised that wasn't coming anytime soon. She was like, I'm sick of dyeing it. So she's gone to her natural grey colour, but instead it's kind of come out this unusual like charcoal, and she loves it. And you know what, it looks so good in her because it's the way her hair is meant to be now at her age. And she looks great, and she loves it when people compliment her hair. She's like, compliment my hair. And I'm like, I know. But I think we need to create positive aging with people, because unfortunately, like, social media is going to give us this complex about it, and we're going to get older and be panicking about things. And then I think we're panicking about the future, even though like we don't know what's going to happen. So I think we need to get people back into the present, and that kind of comes down to the manifesting as well, and living in the present moment. And I think we need to start kind of like being like living day to day and just kind of trying to just go with the flow a little bit more.
There's loads I want to talk to you about, but I don't think we'll have time today.
I know I talk so much, like, oh God.
But I'll just hit on two quick things as we wrap up. One would be, we were talking earlier about your brother Marcus, who passed away in a road traffic accident, and like you've talked extensively, you've been involved in road safety campaigns over the years. Something that personally frustrates me, I know phones are being flagged as an issue for young people. People are checking the phone. I've spoken to someone recently and they're very popular on social media, and they're saying when they're in the car, they're nearly getting like anxious because it's like, I need to see if that message came in or that reply or what notifications. There's a dopamine effect involved. But also something that I've noticed recently, I live in Galway City, which is near the university, and we have a variety of bus lanes.
Yeah.
The amount of N-plate drivers that I see flying up bus lanes, especially in September when college season kicks off. Yesterday, coming home from Dublin, again, heading home, bus lane to my left, and an N-plate flying straight up all along it. And it's like, that this is a bus lane. I do think that there's people out there, young people out there, who are getting a license to drive and are just from nearly the get-go breaking the rules of the road as well. I'm afraid to go into the bus lane because if I get caught and I get penalties,
the fear,
and I need my car for work, and maybe that fear isn't there, and maybe the fear for them would be there if there's more presence of the Gardaí. But that's not fair on the Gardaí either, because they shouldn't have to be the responsible. It should be the person driving. But what do you think? Because you have your ear to the ground. What is the issue? This is just what I've seen over the years. But what do you think is the issue?
Well, I always kind of come back to this, that like we have to educate the youth and re-educate ourselves. Now, you're talking about young people there. They should be the best on the road because they have to get all those lessons nowadays. We didn't have to do that. And they are going on the road with, well, what you would think would be the safest drivers. But they're taking little risks. And I wonder, is that what their parents do? So do they see their parents doing it and go, well, they get away with it and I'll do it. And like I've been in the car with some people and I'm going, hold a second, how did you get a license? Slow down here. And like I think maybe just because of what I've been through, I feel very passionate about it. The phones are what make most sense nowadays for being the culprit. And also I have to say the interface on the cars, the touch screens, they can be quite distracting as well.
There's like an all electric car, and to turn on the wipers, you have to go to the interface on the dashboard, which for me is madness.
No, like I love the old clips and everything and proper handbrakes. But I find that like it just like sometimes and I think the problem is like I connect my phone to my interface, I'll put my maps on, and then I find sometimes I have all notifications actually off my phone bar WhatsApp. But then like sometimes WhatsApp's be popping up and you can just see them popping up. So now I'm thinking I need to knock off WhatsApp because when I'm driving, like even if I'm not going to read them, but sometimes I'm like, oh. And then you're like, it's so
and then you're
easy.
Wondering what is that person texting you about, even if you see the name.
And you're kind of, and like that, I think it's because now we have this automatic fear, or like, oh, everything has to be so rapid. So we are kind of worried about it. But I do find that, it is hard sometimes. And like what I find out is I'm seeing more people with the phone up to their ear driving. And I'm like, that's a 191. I know that
I saw a 241 Jag on the motorway there during the week with the phone up to the ear. I was like, surely in your Jag Jeep or whatever 4-wheel Jag.
I'd say that has like a nearly
and there was no one in the car with them.
See, this is it. And that now wrecks my head. I'm like, that, like you shouldn't be doing it. And I'm like, but like that again, they probably know there's no guards going to be around. So they're just going to go ahead with it. But I think, the phones are a massive one. Just put them down. And I think people don't realise that split second, the difference it makes. I know the RSA are pumping out ads on radio and TV. A lot of people don't watch TV anymore. A lot of people don't listen to the radio. And I know that from people, not even our age and older generation, because unfortunately since the pandemic, an awful lot of people have lost, I guess, trust in mainstream media, which is unfortunate for us that work in it, but like that is the reality. So I know more and more people just stream stuff online. Most of my people I know that have TVs now don't actually have the channels. They have like the streaming services, podcasts, they're listening to Spotify. And I think the RSA don't realise that and then on Spotify and all you can pay for no ads. So they're not hearing the ads. And so social media, what I found out from that News Talk interview is that's where the eyes and ears are. It's on social media. So that's where we need to be targeting. And we need to get into the schools more and get proper education programs in. We do need to get more guards in the street. And it's not necessarily having them actually pulling cars and doing breathalyzing and stuff. It's sometimes just having them driving past. Yeah. Like how many times you're on a road and you're going along, next time you see a squad car behind you and you're like, oh no, is it me? Is it me? Yeah. And you're not speeding, but you're like...
the heart still starts pumping.
Yeah. You're like, oh God. And then you kind of slow down and you suddenly notice everyone's kind of starting to slow down. It's like, oh God. And like they're not going to
We all suddenly become the best drivers ever. Yeah.
And another issue that really irks me, and this was something that was pointed out to me a lot as well when they interviewed out, the amount of people posting on social media the location of speed vans, you're not helping the cause. That the whole point of them is to catch people who are speeding. And also the issue with speed vans is they're in the same place all the time. I know when I drive home exactly the spots they'll be in. So, and everyone does. So they'll just slow down at that mark. There's actually one at Marcus's crash site, and it's there most days. And I feel like going, would you not go somewhere else in the road? Because everyone knows you're there. And I was like, also, as a family, we don't really need that constant reminder when we drive past. We have a headstone. But I know, I can tell, and then people flash me on that road, and I know, and I'm like, don't do that. I was like, the whole point of it is to catch people out. And unfortunately, the only way people learn is you have to hit the pocket. That's when it comes to licensing and penalty points and fines, you have to hit the pocket, because that's where we all get hurt. And that's where we all know when you bring a car to get it serviced or get tyres, the cost, you're going to go, oh, have to get it done because it is important. But you're like, oh, that would cost a lot of money now. And you have to maybe make a sacrifice somewhere else that month to kind of make up for it. So I think if we bring the fines higher, which I know people are going, it's already, we're in a cost of living crisis. But I think if you thought maybe could lose a significant chunk of money if I get caught speeding or on the phone, maybe it would actually make you realise actually it's not worth it. I've been talking to a lot of people in Australia, and their system over there seems to be incredible. They have cameras actually at all those yellow boxes. They have cameras at bus lanes. They have cameras. They actually have cameras over the road that if you're on your phone, so even if you're like this with your phone down, it can catch you on the phone, and that's how they're catching people out. So I think,
brilliant.
I think that's clever. And I was like, this is what we need.
Because I know in Dublin they're talking about bringing in cameras now when people go through a red light. And yesterday, just near here, near our studios, coming back from Dublin off the motorway, stopped at a red light at Briar Hill Junction. Black Land Rover at 2:23, so it's only a year old. So we're all static at a red light, and it comes flying up on the right-hand lane. I was like, surely it's going to stop. And it's just straight around the corner then, heading out towards Briar Hill. Like,
nothing is that important. And unfortunately, if you are on the way to an emergency, you're just going to have to take your time. I was nearly involved in a crash there actually last week. It's really one of these weird, bizarre situations. It was after the News Talk interview, and I was driving along, and the hard shoulder was on. And Kieran actually played out my interview. So I was sitting in the car, listening to myself talking about my life without my brother who was killed on the road and talking about road safety. And next minute, a car just came right in front of me, and I jammed the brakes because I wasn't, I was just doing the regular speed. And just because I was alert, I was able to jam my brakes in time to stop that. Again, it was like a big, huge 4x4 slamming into me. And I just looked at the woman, and I was like, what the hell? And I kind of and she actually wasn't even paying attention. And next time I drove off, and I just looked in my mirror, and then and there was a car come behind me, and she tried to do it again. I was like, okay, this woman's clearly rushing for something, but you're going to cause a pile up here. And I drive a small sized car, and she was driving a very big car, and I was like, that was going to do serious damage. And that's another thing, cars. Young people do not need to drive in a car that's anything over 1.5, 1.6. Handing your youngsters a car that's these big diesel engines or big petrol engines or whatever they are is like handing them a loaded gun, because unfortunately they do drive faster in them. I think there should be a restriction on what size engine you can have at a certain age. And I know young people will hate me for saying that, because it's like they love to have the big cars and they want the powerful cars. That's another huge issue that needs to be addressed, is the cars they're driving. But there's so many different avenues to it. And I do think the government just throwing out going, oh, we're going to put every guard has to do a half an hour road checks every day. That's not addressing the issue. That's just going. And of course we know, I speak to guards as well, they don't have the resources to do that. No. So that's not helping the situation. That's just going to cause issues. That's going to take guards away from something else. So we need to look at a better plan. We need to get into people's heads that you just have to slow down. That's the truth of it. You have to slow down. On the motorway, I have people overtaking me and just flying in across me, and I'm like, you didn't need to do that in bad weather. I have people in the motorway and someone's driving right up behind you, and you're like, give me a second. I'm while you're in the overtaking lane, and you might be just taking over this car, and next thing this one's right up behind you, and you're like, please. It's everything. It's driving bus lanes. It's the small things. So I think we have to really every time we get in the car, we just have to think, right, get me from A to B. And
as you say though, it's a split second.
I talk to my car every time I get into my car. I was like, right, help me now, look after me, take me from A to B. Even though I know I'm the driver, I kind of have this bond with all my cars that I always say, that every car I've had since I've started driving, I'm like, look after me. And I always imagine this protective bubble going around my car when I get into it. And I'm like, get me around safe. And I think if you actually look after your car and have respect for your car, you'll have more respect for the road. Not a lot of people don't care about their cars. They fly the doors open, they don't look after it, they don't get a service, they don't check the oil, they don't do all these things. If you don't have respect for your car won't respect you. That's what I always say, if you look after your car will look after you.
Excellent. Fine. What's the big ambition? Because for me, you're doing so much, and I wanted to get into you're co-hosting with Dahi O'Shea now, who you met that time in TG Car that got you into media. You're on Virgin Television. You've been a journalist in Limerick. You've been on radio. You've done loads and loads. As you said, at the moment you're involved with the women's rugby as well. So I always love following your journey. What let me in a little bit? Well, like, what's the big ambition for Meghann?
I'm loving freelance life at the moment, as daunting as it is. I'm lucky that I can live at home now, so I'm kind of able to, I guess, afford that, to be able to try freelance out and properly give it a go. For years I wanted to do it, but it's always been like the panic of having the steady job and the steady income. But now I was like, no, it's now or never. I'm working a lot in horse racing. I'm working a lot in rugby, which I love. So sporting events, I'd love to be the go-to girl for all the major sporting events. If people be like, right, we need a reporter on the ground, Meghann. So that's kind of what I'm trying to build at the moment. And you talked about manifesting. I said there one day to my mom, I was like, I want to work at Punchestown. I just said, I want to work at Punchestown. I want to go, but I want to work. And then I got an email. I'm telling you now, like an hour later, going, Meghann, we'd love to have you at the opening day of Punchestown working for us, going around interviewing the fans and interviewing people on the ground. And I was like, this manifesting stuff works.
Yeah.
So I also want to dip the toe back in the UK, because the time I was in MTV there, they love the Irish over there. They love her accent. Even when I go back now for just weekends, English people are like, God, I love your accent. And I'm like, do you know what, I always find I'm in London, I feel really happy. So I've kind of been having conversations with people over there to see, is there something I could do? I love the freelance life. I love how it's just so different. So I don't know, could I say that I want to go back into a full-time role?
It keeps you hungry, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's just really good fun like that. I had to cancel holidays because I'm going working in London for the Women's Six Nations, and then I just have fun gigs coming up. But I think I'd love to start working at more like major sporting events here around the world. So I think I love the sport. It's great crack, and it means I can actually go to games and also work, which is the best of both worlds for me. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. And I am loving the kind of, yesterday I didn't have any work on. I just chilled at home and I was unpacking bags, washing clothes, repacking bags. But I love those days chilling. So I think if I can get to a point where I am doing, working like 3-4 days a week, that's ideal for me. But like covering events that I truly love. So yeah, hopefully, as said, if I can be that sporting person.
Brilliant. Well, continued success.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry for all the talking. It's hard to stop me.
I'm sorry for the editor.
Sorry to the editor.